to show this. What's going on? We're live, baby. And I'm here with my buddy, Joey Emont, aka RestoraFit.
Yep.
Great trainer. We're here because one of the things that I get asked the most about right now, especially with my program, The 20-Minute Body, has a lot of HIIT training in it, is a lot of questions on HIIT cardio. So what we really want to do right now is answer a lot of the questions and have a discussion about the truth about HIIT cardio and fat loss in particular. Now, behind the scenes, we've got Brianna back there. So I want to thank Brianna for helping out. She's going to be helping field some of the questions. So if you guys are, we got a couple people tuning in. Brianna's in the back. What's up, Nicole? Giving a shout out. How are you guys doing? So again, if you guys have questions, we're going to be having a discussion about this, and then we can start fielding questions. Liz, what's up? Big hearts to you too. What's going on? Yeah, Liz Steffen. We got Carol McConnell in the house. She said, I'm in. Boom. Give me a little emoji and a fist bump. So seriously, this is a really important topic of mine because there are two things that happen that we have discussed a lot with our clients and groups that we've trained, is that the two biggest issues I see right now in the industry with HIIT cardio is some people are doing it too soon, and there's a lot of injuries. There really are. They're doing programs that they don't have the strength and conditioning for to all of a sudden go from the couch to 60 miles per hour, and they're getting injuries. And the other thing is people think that they're doing HIIT training or high intensity interval training, and they're really not. So what we wanted to start off by doing, I've got a little chart over here. Brianna's going to help turn this. So we're going to start talking about, I'll just pull it off here actually, is HIIT training. So when we talk about HIIT training or high intensity interval training, there are two things I want you guys to understand. The HIIT training is way up here. This is based on your heart rate and effort. Way up here. Down at the bottom is more of the steady state cardio. So one thing I want to get clear first is cardio versus HIIT training. Let me just say this. Cardiovascular training is HIIT. Now everybody usually thinks, I'm going to go do my cardio, and cardio is only. Tiffany Howard's in the house. Cassandra, what's up? How are you guys? Cardio doesn't just mean getting on the treadmill or going to a dance class or running. That's not cardio. Cardio is just your heart and your lungs and your blood vessels working. So aerobic training is down here. It's more low intensity stuff. That is low intensity cardio. The high intensity cardio is going to be up here. HIIT, high intensity interval training. Intervals meaning your heart rate goes very high, and then it goes very low, and it goes very high. That's this interval from high to low. So when you guys, a pretty good example of this is, let's say you're walking. You got low intensity here. You can sustain this activity for maybe an hour. Low intensity. You can have a conversation during this type of activity. Easy. Joey and I are talking. We're going for a walk. It's all good. As you start to move up into higher intensity, maybe you start to jog, or even up here, you start to do a little bit of a run. Much harder to have a conversation, but you can still have a conversation. This red line is a threshold. It's called the threshold, and you know you're at threshold when it's very hard for you to start having a conversation. Like every couple of breaths, you're like, so anyway, I'm at work, and we got this deadline, and you're like that. You can still have a conversation, but it's starting to be difficult. Above that is when you can't have a conversation, where you're literally like, give me a second, I gotta catch my breath. So I like using walking, jogging, running, and maybe sprinting as a very easy way to understand this. So this is the little graph that we're gonna go back to. So there's a lot of people that think they're doing HIIT cardio up here, and some of them really should be focusing on this area here to get stronger, get their heart stronger, their lungs stronger first, so they can really optimize up here. So I'm gonna go back. And just as a quick recap with Joey, and you guys that have been asking a lot of questions on what it actually is to be doing HIIT cardio. So we have these two extremes. You saw above the line, the HIIT, and below the line, this is our lower intensity cardio. So we're gonna talk about these two extremes, the high and the low, right now. So a big question that we talked about recently is, when should I be doing it? When should I be doing HIIT cardio? And we want to talk about where you should start first and then progress to. So Joey, I'm going to let you talk about more of the aerobic base or the low intensity base. This is where people should start that are basically coming off the couch. Now, if you're not there, that's fine. But when someone asks us, what is the starting point and the end point? Here's the starting point. And again, it's down here, way below the threshold where you guys are maybe going for a walk. It could be a jog for some of you guys, but you're able to have a conversation. What are the benefits of not doing high intensity interval training, but starting with a lower intensity program?
Well, I think that a lot of people have actually read enough about HIIT training that they think that that's going to be the most important or the most effective thing for them.
For fat loss.
Right. So just like you said, there might be some people that either they jump into HIIT before they're ready, and they don't take advantage of the fact that there's benefits to doing low intensity cardio, or they stay in the low intensity cardio mindset as if that's what's going to give them the results that they want. And the truth is kind of somewhere in the middle, that if somebody's actually just starting off, they should be spending some time getting their low intensity kind of covered. And the benefits of doing that is that the way that you train your heart when you're training with kind of a low intensity is that you're actually going to increase something called stroke volume. So your heart learns to be able to pump more blood with every single beat. And so that's oxygenating your tissues at a better level. And in order to burn fat, you actually need oxygen to feed your mitochondria so that you can actually pull the fat into the cells, utilize it, right? There's also an increase in what they call capillary density. That means your body actually increases the amount of blood vessels that feed the rest of your body. So if you don't actually spend enough time in the low intensity cardio range before you start doing HIIT, your fat loss is actually going to be diminished.
You hear that? So
Okay.
so I want to jump in real quick. So look, if you guys have been training pretty hard and you've been doing a lot of the programs, a lot of people are like, hey, I love your Rev Abs program, Brett, I'm doing 20-minute body. Look, if you've been doing steady training, then the low intensity area may not be for you. But some of people that are literally like have been deconditioned, have taken off time, the low intensity stuff, here's a great example. If doing, let's say, a walk or a jog for 30 minutes for you is like really difficult, which I know a lot of people are, that means that your heart, your lungs, and your blood vessels are not strong enough yet. Don't do HIIT. You need to get those muscles, the heart, and all the stuff that circulates the oxygen that helps you burn fat stronger. So if you go out and you're doing a 30-minute, not a 30-minute fast run or a sprint, but pretty a moderate, low intensity thing, and that's hard for you, you need to not do HIIT cardio right. You got to do this base level. Now, for a lot of you guys out there that have been going to the gym and that you're hitting it, a lot of people are in this mindset of, I just got to keep doing these dance classes and these classes where your heart rate stays steady and it never really spikes, never really gets you out of breath. You guys are going to plateau at some point. You're going to get good results in the beginning, but your body is going to get acclimated to that type of fat burning, and you're going to plateau. And I know a lot of people. So a lot of women would come to me for training, and they have been doing all these classes. Oh, I'm doing cycling, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing my dance class, and I'm doing that. And when you would test them, and I would test them, the one thing that they lacked, two things, was strength. Like they couldn't squat heavy enough, couldn't do push-up, let's say. They could run on a treadmill at a steady state for a long time, but they couldn't sprint. So what they needed to do is move out of that lower or medium intensity phase and start getting into these intervals. So I don't know where you're at, but one thing to do is to do just a 30 or 40 minute, maybe it's on a rowing machine, maybe it's on the elliptical machine. You test your heart rate where you're not completely out of breath. And if you can't really sustain that low to medium intensity, time to take a base conditioning and work on that.
Yeah, and I think that another mistake, like you said, is that so most women actually have a pretty good cardiovascular base, but they just stay there for too long. And so if you're really working on your aerobic base, really it maximizes at about 6 to 8 weeks. So if you've been doing all the dance classes and you've been kind of keeping your heart rate steady, and you've been like in the gym and you've been doing your cardiovascular work,
even circuit training with weights, but your heart rate is staying the same.
Right. If you're not actually like pushing it enough and you're staying in that zone, about 8 weeks is probably enough to maximize that zone. And when, just like Brett just said, if you are able to maintain kind of a medium intensity, heart rate stays kind of steady for about 30 minutes, and you
or
think
more.
like, or more, and you think that that's like, you know, you're pretty good, and you're not like really struggling with that, then I think it's time to move on.
Good.
Know?
And Patty Murphy says, what if you're not just starting out, but you still are far from where you want to be? So this is where we're going to dig in right now. Okay. So that tells you phase 1, right? So that's phase 1. That's where you actually want to stay down here and get your heart and lungs strong enough and not dip up here. Because if you don't do this, your heart is not going to be strong enough. And here's what happens if you don't stay in that initial phase. You try to do HIIT training, and the first thing that happens, you get too much lactic acid and you're done. Your form is not good because you're not strong enough. And if you can't go down on a squat or down on a push-up with proper form, you're never going to maximize those intervals. So now we're moving up to where Patty is. Patty says, hey, I'm in the gym. I've been doing it, but I haven't hit my results. What can I do? Okay, so now let's get into the interval training. So when you first start to dip up into the intervals, here's your heart rate starting low. You're walking, you're jogging, maybe you're doing circuit training and you start to really spike. Now you're out of breath. So let's say this is a 30 to 90 second interval, and then you've got to go down and rest for maybe 30 to 90 seconds, and you bring the interval back up. So one of the first things that we get asked, what type of equipment should I use? How often should I do it? And how long should I be working? And how long should I be resting? So this is like you're doing an introduction to HIIT training. So Patty, here's your question coming up. If you're going to start now dipping into interval training because you've done your aerobic base, your low intensity base, I still wouldn't say just go balls to the wall and go crazy right away. So to me, the shorter the interval, so let's say you're sprinting for 30 seconds, the intensity is going to be higher. The shorter the amount of time, the effort should be higher. So I like to do this. We talked about 30, 60, 90 as really good numbers. 30 seconds, 60 seconds, and 90 seconds. So for 90 seconds, this is a longer interval. Now most people think, oh, it's longer, it's going to be harder. Not necessarily. I want you guys to try 90 seconds of an interval if you're just starting to get into HIIT training. 90 seconds. So if you are on a scale of 1 to 10 of an effort, this would be at like a 6 or a 7. That walk or jog is like a 3 or 4. Now you start going 6 to 7, you're out of breath. Not immediately, but at the end of the 90 seconds, you're out of breath, and you should be able to repeat this maybe 3 or 4 times. Now you were talking about, let's say you've got someone that likes to jog or bike ride or do that, and they're doing that for 45 minutes. How many times could they do this 60 to 90 second push in that 30 minutes?
I think at the very beginning, it's probably a good idea to just try to push it once or twice and just see how you do.
Yeah.
You know, because if you do it once, if you're going for like a 45-minute jog or like a bike ride, or you know, even if you're in the gym, like you're doing, you know, recumbent bike type work, and you're kind of keeping things medium intensity or whatever, and then you want to decide that you're gonna just push it. You know, push it once for like, set the timer on the minute and just pick a minute and go after it and go, okay, let's see how it feels. And so if you hit it for a minute and you just decide to go for a breathless opportunity, you know, during your 45-minute ride, maybe minute 20, you go, okay, from minute 20 to 21, I'm gonna try and hit it as hard as I can just for that minute, and then bring it back down to your previous intensity. Now, if you feel like you're totally gassed after that, just finish up the rest of your cardio and just kind of say, okay, maybe next time I'll go for 2. You know, and that's like a good introduction, I think, to the beginning stages of HIIT. Before you actually start to put together like a total HIIT workout and then go after it from the beginning.
Yeah.
Like, you know, try 1 and then maybe try 2 like the next time, maybe the following week, or maybe the next like 3 days later, you might try 2. And so you'll start to realize that your recovery is getting better. and you're able to kind of continue to push it a little bit more.
So here is some of the equipment. So this is, you're going to take a 90-second interval, get out of breath, and then come back and recover at whatever speed you're doing it at. I like using treadmill, elliptical machine. One of my favorites is an arc trainer. An arc trainer just uses your legs. If you don't know an arc trainer, look it up. Some of the gyms have it. Very low impact. I also like the Versa Climber that you're climbing. The stepper is great. A rowing machine is awesome. If you're at home, you could run outside, you could bike ride, jump rope is great. These are all sort of like cardio pieces of equipment, very easy to use. So let's say you are running for 30 minutes, or you've been rowing for 20 to 30 minutes, or you've been on a spin bike for 40 minutes, whatever you're doing, we are taking what a lot of people have written in and say, this is what I do for my cardio. It's about 30 minutes. Add 1, 2, or 3 of these 90-second pushes in that to get used to it. So, Patty, if that's not you, let's say you've been doing more, we're going to get to the next phase. So that's an intro to adding some HIIT. Now let's say you're like, okay, you know what? I've actually done that, and I just want to go into the gym, and I want to get on there, and I just want to do intervals on the machine, and I'm not even doing a 30-minute like regular jog. I'm going to just go, 60 seconds on, some time off, and I'm just going to repeat that. So you're not really jogging for 40 minutes. This is a dedicated like repetition scheme. So you could still use those pieces of equipment that we just talked about. Could even do boxing. But I want to give you now the next phase. The next phase is, instead of doing those longer pushes of like 60 to 90 seconds and doing shorter efforts, like 3 efforts, now we're going to reduce the amount of time that you're actually sprinting, but we're going to increase the efforts. So the next one, first one was 90 seconds, maybe 3 or 4 efforts. Now we're going to go to 60 seconds, and we're going to get 6 efforts. So you could go into the gym, and I started doing this with a lot of the people in 20-Minute Body. We got somebody, Charlie Wilson is saying, I love HIIT. I had a baby 8 months ago, and now she's getting back into it. She's been doing it steadily.
There was a question from Elizabeth as well, as far as how do you determine your heart rate for each level?
Okay, so it's a great question on heart rate. I honestly want to save that for another chat. I don't want to get into heart rate right now. It's a heart rate monitor and a lot of other stuff is a little trickier to do, but this is how we talk about intensity. You can know when you're in this breathless state because you literally are going to be out of breath. And there are degrees to that. But what I would say is, like when I was doing 20-Minute Body with our group, I would have them say our anthem. Love your body, it's one of a kind, life is short, don't waste time. I'm like, if you can get through the first sentence without taking a breath, you're not even there. You should be like, love your body, it's one of a kind. Like, you literally cannot have a conversation. Heart rates are very tricky. It's something that, it's different for everybody, so I'd rather give a more generic term like that, where you can also use rating of perceived exertion, where we're talking about now doing these like medium high intensity efforts, 60 seconds for 6 efforts in a row. You're on a scale of 1 to 10, you're at like an 8, which is not comfortable at all. It's like when you're doing that activity, you can only concentrate on that activity. If I'm on the treadmill, I can't really watch the TV or look who's around me. If I'm at an effort at 8, I have to focus on every foot, every breath, every arm stroke. I have to focus on that, because if I don't focus on my technique, I'm going to wobble and something's going to go wrong. So there is like how much kind of pain I'm going through and how much I have to actually focus. So now if you're on a treadmill, I'm going to say we're getting up into the very high intensity part. You are now at a fast run. The 90-second push that we just talked about prior, that's like a fast jog that you've taken it up a little bit. This is like, it's a fast run. So maybe if you're on a treadmill and a fast jog for you is like 6 miles per hour where you're starting to get out of breath, now we're up to like 7.5. And you're like, wow, this is tough. I got to focus on my technique, and it's really tough. Some of you, maybe that's not fast enough. Okay, so 6 efforts at 60 seconds, and that is good. How much should you rest? I personally like to rest equal the amount of time that I'm doing the effort. How about you?
Yeah, that's
Sometimes more.
You know, I think it's going to go, when it comes down to fat loss, it's there's a little bit more give to kind of like your rest times. When you're training for athleticism, it gets very, very specific. And the same thing with like heart rate zones. I think when people focus too much on heart rate zones, they don't end up training with the intensity that they actually need to get the optimal fat loss that they're looking for. And that's why I think so much better when it comes to just fat loss training, it's actually way better to just focus on your breath.
Yeah.
You know, because so if you're in a low intensity zone, when you could have a comfortable conversation, and then as you get into the medium intensity, you start kind of taking some breaths in between every couple words. And when you're really in the high intensity, you can't talk, you just have to focus on what you're doing, and it's not sustainable for longer than maybe 90 seconds. So that's really all you need to track when it comes to fat loss. Keep it that simple. It really is that simple. There's no little, secret ways to, get your heart rate going.
I'll say this, I'm wearing a peak basis. This thing tracks my heart rate. And I've used this before. Liberty Chan says hello. What's up, KTLA5 superstar? Darius Young in the house. He's from Princeton, New Jersey. I use this sometimes for, looking at my heart rate. But if I'm on the treadmill sprinting or doing something, I can't look at this. Here's where the gauge is. It's right here, baby. It's in your heart. It's in your head. It's what I call the chatter. When that voice comes up and says, hey, Joey's not looking at us. We should probably slow down. Or like, my trainer doesn't see me, or you're doing rev abs and you're like, oh, Brett's on the TV. He doesn't know if I should quit. That's called the chatter. And when that is at like a volume 7 or an 8, you're in the freaking zone, baby. You know what I'm saying? This type of HIIT training builds that inner strength. The louder that I need to quit volume is going up, where you really don't need to quit, and and I know where that is where you want to be. That's where you want to be. So you can use all the heart rate you want, but so many times you can't look down during the interval. You have to go by like how out of breath you are and how much loud that chatter is in your ear. So this is a great question. Sharon Courtney Whitehurst had a great one on focus, and that's how she got a lot of her results. And people are asking about, Sharon Cusson is saying get breathless. Guys, a great question of how do I measure my intensity? Out of breathness and chatter. And then you have to keep pushing that envelope. There is no one else looking at you. If you've got a partner, there are some ways of saying, okay, if you've done burpees for a minute, one other way, I will say this, one other way is, like in a lot of my 20-minute body program workouts, they're done on the minute. So let's say the 4x4, you're given 50 seconds to do an exercise. Let's say they're lunges. And those can make you go breathless if you're using weights. If you start doing that and you get 20 lunges in a minute, the next time you go at it, try to get 22 repetitions or 23. You can actually increase your repetitions in the amount of time, and that's going to make your effort go up. But even if you increase the reps, you still got to go on this, and you still got to go on this. How much effort did you really feel? So that's I think our thing on intensity.
Yeah, and one thing on the rest, I would say on the longer intervals. So when I consider longer intervals would be over a minute.
Like so 90 seconds.
Minute, 90 seconds. You want to stick with probably at the minimum 1-to-1. So if you've done 90 seconds of running, you probably should do 90 seconds of rest, 60 seconds of running, 60 seconds of rest. But you could go 2-to-1. So if you do 60 seconds, you could do 2 minutes of rest. That's probably a good window, and it's going to depend on your conditioning level. But as you get shorter and shorter intervals, the chatter, of course, is going to get higher. If you're doing a 30-second interval or you're doing a 20-second interval, right, it should be even more intense than the 60-second or the 90-second. So the thing is, if it's a 20-second interval, you're going to think, okay, it's shorter duration, which means it's easier. But in reality, it should be a lot harder because you're really gassing yourself that much more that the chatter is going to go even higher. So with those, the rest actually needs to go higher. So it would be 3-to-1 or even 5-to-1, right? So if I'm doing 20 seconds, I probably have to rest about 2.5 minutes or something like that.
So here,
right? So it gets...
I'll try to... We were talking about this, and to make it simple, 30, 60, 90. If you're just getting into the HIIT training, you're doing 90-second intervals, and you're going to rest at least that much time, 90 seconds. When you start to shorten it, now We're getting into the one that we were talking before for 60 seconds. You've got to rest at least 60, but you could go a little bit longer. If you're doing a 30-second interval, you would rest at least 30, or you could rest longer than the 30. You could rest 45 seconds, a minute. Now, that to me is a lot of the ideal ways to do it. Here's the problem, and I hope everybody got that. The shorter the work interval, 30 seconds is shorter than 90 seconds, the more effort you got to do, and the longer you've got to rest. You've got to rest, instead of 30 seconds, 45 to a minute. That's simple. That's the rule of thumb. Here's the problem, everybody, that if you're doing a DVD workout like mine, or you're in a classroom where I taught, no one likes to sit around. So when you're working with us as personal trainers, and I tell you to rest for 90 seconds to 2 minutes, you will. But this is the reality. We can come up with these great schemes, but if people don't do it or don't want to do it, it doesn't work. So unfortunately, when it comes to actual DVD programs like My 20-Minute Body, or I'm teaching a class, people don't want to stand around. So if I'm doing a 30-second interval, sometimes I don't let you rest a minute. I'm only letting you rest 30 seconds or less than that. Another program out there is Tabata. It's only 10 seconds, and they're only letting you rest 10 seconds. Is it ideal? No, I don't think it's ideal. Will it work? Yes. But you guys have to understand one thing. So when you start doing that and you start limiting your rest, what do you think starts to break down? Your form. That's one of the main things. And when your form breaks down, the chance of injury goes up. So if you guys are going to go balls to the wall on an effort for 30 seconds, and then you only give yourself a shorter rest for whatever program you're doing, man, you better be concentrating on that rest and nothing else. And if you start to see your form break down, like you don't squat all the way or your feet start hitting the treadmill more, my suggestion is lower the weight, do a modified version of it, or rest longer. And I say that in a lot of the workouts, like in the DVD workouts, I'm like, hey, if your form's not here, do the modification. Take a longer rest. Press pause. It's a big, I think, temptation for people when they're in a group setting to just do what everyone else is doing and not take the rest, and that is going to be a problem. So that's, to me, it's actually not high intensity interval training. It's actually what I call high volume intensity training, because your rest intervals aren't even rest. You're like punching during the rest interval or skipping rope or doing something else to keep yourself entertained, but your heart rate never really comes down. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that as well, but my main thing is a lot of people that do these group classes think they're really doing this high intensity interval training where their heart goes up and comes down, but you're not doing that. Your heart rate's not really going as high as it can. It's kind of getting here, and then you don't give yourself rest, and you're kind of doing this, which helps with fat loss in the beginning, but you really do plateau. Eventually, you want to let yourself get these big spikes, give a hard effort, and then really let yourself rest for the adequate amount of time.
Well, we know that HIIT training is going to be the most effective thing for fat loss. That's a given. But when we're talking about keeping your form really good, I think this is where that strength training aspect to your whole like workout routine as a whole comes in.
Yeah.
Because like I said, cardiovascular fitness is not really the biggest problem when it comes to like most women in the gym training. Most of the problem is actually that they're not even strong enough. And so when you're not strong enough, you're really not going to be able to push your body to the place where you're doing legitimate HIIT training. So if you want to really enter into a HIIT training routine that's really effective for you, you're going to have to back that up with some strength training as well, because you need to be strong enough to actually push your heart where it needs to go and reduce the risk of injury. So that's where I think the strength training portion of your routine really plays a strong role. Strong role, no pun intended, but...
Let's take some questions from Brianna. So now we've given our little spiel. I want to answer questions from you guys. Thanks for staying in and hanging in so patiently. Give me some questions, baby. So, do you have any? Do you want to field us?
I'm checking here. No questions yet.
So a lot of people. Oh, I see a couple that were. Some of them about. Here's something for strength training. So one of the main things. This is another big thing that I overlook on a lot of the men and women that I was training. When I would test them and we go through this sort of assessment, if you guys want to be able to do HIIT training, so let's say you want to sprint, you want to row, you could do boxing for 30 seconds and stop, or kickboxing, boom. You have to have the strength in your muscles to do that. So what a lot of people, and I found a lot of my female clients, they didn't want to do a lot of strength training because they're afraid of getting bigger. Understand, you have to do some type of, I don't care if it's body weight training, TRX, bands, it doesn't matter. You don't have to lift barbells and dumbbells. But if you don't start doing good, squat, deadlift, a push-up, a bent over row, these basic fundamental exercises to get your whole body strong, you can't sprint more. When I get a client to be able to do a great squat all the way down and all the way up with some weight on them, watch how their sprint goes up. I would have clients come in, a lot of women that would train with me, and we would start on a treadmill at 6 miles per hour, and they would think that it was really hard. And I said, in 2 weeks, I'm going to get you at 10 miles per hour. They're like, there's absolutely no way. And after doing good strength training, deadlift, squats, bent over row, push-up, and some of this interval training, and they would be at 10 miles per hour in 2 weeks, every single time. Every single time. And they were just like, I cannot believe. But you know what it was? It wasn't doing more interval training. It was good, solid strength training. So Joey brings up a super important point. I don't care where you are in your quest for cardiovascular HIIT training. If you don't concentrate on the right form and do the right strength training, you are not maximizing your fat loss at all. You are not going to get strong enough to sprint faster, because it's just like weightlifting. You're doing 100 pounds, you want to get stronger, you got to put more weight on. If you're running on a treadmill, you got to get a little faster if you want to basically increase that fat loss. So,
there was a question by Sharon, are shorter runs better than longer runs?
So a question by Sharon was, are shorter ones better than longer runs? Now this plays right into the question of, where are you in your cardiovascular health? If you're at the beginning where you haven't been doing anything, then I would want you to do a little bit of a longer run at a lower intensity that Joey was talking about, building this low intensity cardiovascular base to get your heart strong, your lungs strong, the capillaries and all the blood vessels strong. And then as you get more fit, shorten the time and increase the intensity.
Right. Yep.
It depends where you are. I don't know where you are, but we talked about doing this 20, 30-minute test to see if you can handle that. And if you can't, you got to do something more low intensity, longer duration.
Now, Michelle was asking to change the shape of her body. Is she supposed to go more heavy or lighter when it comes to her interval?
Okay, so Michelle is asking, she wants to change her body shape, and she wants to know, should she go heavy or lighter on the intervals or the strength training? The intervals?
During the strength training.
Okay, so I wouldn't say lighter or heavier when it comes to interval training. Michelle, I would say you do that with strength training. I would say more intense or probably less intense for the interval training. I'm going to let Joey sort of answer this one.
Yeah, I think I really like the idea behind strength training. It's in the word, strength training. So your goal should always be to increase the amount of load that you can push, because that's a sign that you're getting stronger. That's why we do strength training, okay? So I don't tend to give people like, we should do light or heavy. I always let the reps dictate the amount of load that I'm using. So if you want to push something for 12 repetitions, you should use a weight that automatically leads to the last 2 reps being pretty tough to do. And if you're doing 8 reps, then the 8th rep should be really tough to do. If you're doing 15 reps, and so maybe we can do a video on this type of thing like at another time where we talk about using different reps and different loads to kind of progress your training program.
Yeah.
Right?
No. He said something really important. He said the last 2 to 3 reps of every lifting that you're doing has got to be very challenging. That is an easy, simple thing to remind her. Michelle, if you're, and I want to get to April's question when you were saying, but Michelle, if you're asking also about the intensity or the effort, should you do harder efforts or less harder efforts on your interval training? This is how I usually gauge it. I like to have somebody get in at least 6 efforts of very good intervals. 6 if they've moved past this initial phase of interval training, which we were talking about, 90 seconds for 3 to 4 reps. If you've been training consistently, I want to get you to basically 6 to 10. I want to see you be able to repeat this effort 6 to 10 times with the proper rest, proper form, and you're giving it your all. If you've given me 6 and your form starts to break down, I don't need to do more. I don't need you to say, okay, if you were sprinting at 8, now let's sprint at 6 and give me 10 more. I don't need to do that. If you've done 6 and it's your all and you've given me that and the form starts to break down, you're done. Don't worry about it. The next time you get in there, you need to finish the amount of efforts that you've decided. If it's 6, you need to finish all 6 of those with perfect form and great effort. Then you move up. So I don't necessarily, your question is how many times? I start shorter, 6, then they max that, then I go to 8, then they do that, and then I get up to 10, and we've decreased the time a little bit each time, where if they're doing 6 at 60 seconds, by the time we get up to 10, they're doing 30 seconds. So start with less repetitions, but more time during that repetition. So if you're running on the treadmill 6 times, but each effort 1 minute, then move up to 10 efforts at 30 seconds. Okay, April had a question. What was April's question?
April was asking if she runs at a fast pace and then goes to lift weights and gets back on and runs.
Okay.
Does that help gain strength and burn?
Great question. So April is asking about combining strength training and interval training at the same time. This is something we were actually just talking about yesterday. If, ideally, guys, people ask, well, how many times a week should we do this? My opinion, there is an ideal amount, and I'm just going to give you my practical version of this. If you can fit in equal strength days and equal interval days, that would be great. I would start with a minimum of 2 and 2. So interval days are like you're just doing this type of very high intensity cardio. Strength training days can just be, I do this. I do 2 exercises. I may do a back squat and a push-up, but I do those for 10 repetitions each, and I repeat that interval of those 2 exercises 7, 8, 10 times. That's it. 2 exercises, 10 repetitions each, and all I do is I do 7 rounds of that, 8 rounds of that, and I'm done. I'm done in 20 minutes. But it's hard. That is not this full bodybuilding strength day. 2 strength, 2 cardio, or HIIT training, and if you get, Joey loves 3 and 3. He's an animal. He loves getting the 3 and 3. But equal, we love trying to do equal. That's like, practically wise, I would say that. Now, the other question from April is, hey, I don't have a lot of time. I can't dedicate 4 days, 6 days. I can give you 2 or 3. Can I combine cardio and strength in one day? Yes, you can. You can. But the order of what you should do first and second, I'm going to let this guy talk about which ones you should do first, in his opinion.
Totally. So I think that because strength training requires a lot more focus, you have to actually concentrate on your form, and you're actually lifting loads that could be potentially injurious to your body. If you're not actually doing it with total concentration, you shouldn't really be exhausting yourself before you get on the weight floor. So it's going to be beneficial for most people to do their strength training first, get everything they can out of it so that they can be completely focused for that time period, and then afterwards, since relative to like the effort, right, HIIT training and strength training, so the cardio is going to be a little bit less, you can tack that on to the end of your strength training. And so you usually want to do the strength training first, then you can tack on your HIIT training or your cardio or whatever it happens to be, and that's going to be the most effective way to combine the 2.
And how long? Both of us like doing 20 of each. I'm big on 20 minute body. You could do a 20 to 30 minute strength, 20 minute HIIT. Now, here's the one caveat. The strength training, guys, that he's talking about requires a lot of focus. It's not doing a tricep kickback. It's not being on all fours and doing a booty kick. He's talking about movements that require multiple joints, multiple muscles. So these are full body movements. It could be kettlebell swings. It could be full body push-ups. It could be on a T-Rex, a full body row. It could be full body squats. I don't care if it's a body weight squat, you've got a 4-pound body bar, or you've got 185 pounds on it. It's got to be these full body movements that requires your attention. Now, if you're doing body weight, or you've just got, let's say, an 8-pound body bar and that's where you're at, that's great. But if that body weight or that 8-pound bar doesn't require your 100% attention because it's too easy for you, or you're doing kickbacks, you're not maximizing your strength training, and that type of literally, if you're doing little accessory exercise like some crunches, some booty stuff, little tricep stuff, guys, tack that on to the after you do your interval training.
Right, it's easier.
It's too easy. But if you're doing this stuff that's tough, it goes first. But a lot of people that I train with for the first time, I watch their strength training and they're just like, and this and that. And I'm like, those are kind of full body movements, but you're not giving me the effort. You're not even sweating. So if you're doing those movements, baby, you have to be putting in some effort, my friend. It's got to be sweaty. It's got to be tough. It's got to require your attention. And you got to be tired at the end of that. You need to take a break before you jump on the treadmill and do your HIIT or whatever it is. You can't just jump right into it. When I do it, I'm like, I need a 5-minute break here. Let me literally collect my thoughts and even ask myself, do I have the energy now to do this next set? So April, great question. I think we had a couple of more.
Yeah, there was a question from JC. Is there any truth to the concept that during HIIT training, your body burns muscle before fat?
So, good question. JC said, is there truth to if you're doing HIIT, one more time?
If you're doing HIIT training, that it burns muscle before fat.
So if you're doing HIIT training, is it true that you burn muscle before burning fat? So I have my opinion on this. I mean, listen, a lot of it depends on what you've eaten beforehand and what you haven't eaten. But I mean, this guy could go on for days on this. Let's try to keep it real to the point and short.
I'm gonna keep it really simple. I'd never heard that before. That's very funny.
So here, guys, here's something that when you talk about doing, I'm gonna just chime in for 1 second. You have three types of fuel for the body. You can use sugar or glucose in your body, which is usually stored. It's either circulating in your blood or it's actually in the muscles or your liver. You can use fat, which we all want to use, right? You can also use fat, or you can use muscle. Muscle can get turned into sugar. It's called gluconeogenesis. And most people don't want to do that because the muscle tissue is where the mitochondria he mentioned live. And the mitochondria are what oxidize or burn fat. So I know a lot of ladies out there are like, I want to get rid of my muscle. Well, when you get rid of your muscle, unfortunately, you're getting rid of your fat burning ability. Now, if you've got too much muscle and you don't fit in your skinny jeans, I hear you. But as an overall principle, you really don't want to be losing your muscle tissue. So when people talk about doing cardio and they are losing their muscle to produce energy, aka sugar, that is a problem for a lot of people. So a lot of people want to avoid that. So this is one of the things that comes up is if you do fasted cardio, so you wake up in the morning, your body has already been burning sugar because at night when you're breathing, blinking, sleeping, and all these actions that you cannot control, they take energy. They take sugar to actually, and some fat to use. You wake up after 8 hours, your body has now burned a lot of fuel. You're in a fasted state. You haven't eaten anything. So a lot of people say, I'm going to work out like this because it should increase my body's ability to burn fat because I don't have any sugar. I haven't eaten anything. So if I haven't eaten sugar, the first thing my body is going to probably burn, and I'm low blood sugar because I've been sleeping, it's going to burn fat. But the problem can be that you can burn muscle. So this question from JC is actually not the simplest one to answer. I just wanted to give you guys a background of generally where this comes. Intermittent fasting people that don't eat in the morning, I'll let you go.
Sure. Well, if you're gonna do something fasted, the most available substrate for energy production during that time is gonna be fat. But if you're fasted and you start training way too hard, then yeah, you're probably gonna start burning some muscle off. And so that is a tool that I use with people. I actually will have people do fasted walking in the morning, but it's low intensity when they're fasted. So it's a very effective tool, but you have to know how to pair it. So if you're gonna do a really intense HIIT session, you should make sure that you're well fed, beforehand. so that you have the energy to power through it. And the more energy that you have to power through it, the better that workout's going to be. And actually, the opposite happens, because the HIIT training is intense, which actually tells your nervous system to save all your muscle. And because they're shorter, more intense intervals, and the time period is shorter with more intensity, your body basically says, wow, I'm really putting this muscle to use, I better keep it, I better hold on to it. But keep in mind, most of the time when you're going to do a really intense HIIT session, it's going to be in a fed state. So I probably would eat like 45 minutes, something nutritious that's going to help me to really push it to the maximum.
What would you suggest?
So Jay, I want to get to JC. So JC, when you're asking about, is HIIT training going to burn my muscle? This is what I was saying. It depends on if you're fed or not. So if you're generally in a fasted state where you have not eaten and your blood sugar is low, the propensity to burn muscle at that point is high. I did a cleanse where I only had green juices. There was no fruit in it, no sugar, so I didn't have a lot of carbs in it. And I did that for 3 days, and I started doing my HIIT training with it. I was gone. I lost so much muscle tissue. I didn't like that effect. For me was not good, and I don't really like to do too many of those. So if I do a juice fast now, I add hemp protein. I add a ton of protein to those drinks that they usually don't give, because I lost too much muscle doing these fasted HIIT training sessions. The next time I did it, I didn't do HIIT. I did more steady 30, 40 minute low intensity stuff, and I was able to burn fat and not lose my muscle. So I hope that answers your question. Now the next question is, if you're going to do is what should you fuel up with before? Is that was the question? So
meal.
I'm just going to say this, guys. We've got so many questions coming in. We will answer these on the page after this. I'm going to get to it over the next couple days. I'm going on a trip to Austin, so if I don't get to the questions today, I promise I'll get to them over the weekend. And ask the questions, please, in the comments below. And we got to wrap this up because I actually got to go to the airport. But if you want more episodes on this, write in the comments what type of topics do you want us to expand on. If you want to expand on more nutrition, more training tips, let me know in the comments, and we're happy to do this. So I'll do this. Let's answer if you are going to go into a HIIT training session, what is a type of pre-workout meal that you would do?
I typically like a mix of all the macronutrients, a little bit, so I don't like to
macronutrients are fat, carbs, and protein.
Right? So maybe a good example would be an apple with maybe some a little peanut butter on it, or a nut butter of some sort, and maybe a lean protein of some sort, maybe a small amount of chicken breast of some sort. And so that way you have your protein represented a little bit. I don't like eating too much, because then if you got something heavy sitting in your stomach, then you're not going to be able to really perform at your best. Something else that's really easy, if you make a whey protein shake and mix in a little bit of coconut oil into it, there you got that, and maybe a half a rice cake, just so that you have a little bit of carbohydrate to power your system.
Yeah, and I'll say this. So guys, it depends if you're fasted or not fasted. He likes to do that. I train really early in the morning, so I don't like having a lot of solid food. So I end up doing a protein shake, but I don't use whey protein because I'm half Asian and I'm dairy intolerant. So I do a plant-based protein that usually has pea or brown rice protein in it. Now, in the morning, I end up doing it fasted. So I'll have a little bit of this protein. So technically I'm not fasted, but I'm not eating a lot of solid food. Some people like to do this. Some people like to add fruit to it. It gives them a big energy boost. That's great. If you want to add some of that to give you energy, that's fine. I've adapted now to not doing fruit. I add an MCT oil, like coconut oil, or some other type of oil, because fat is also fuel. It's not as fast acting fuel as a piece of fruit, which you'll feel immediately, like banana. But my body is acclimated to me just doing a plant-based protein, water, and a little bit of this MCT oil. And when I drink that, now I don't feel full, and I can do a really hard HIIT session and I still have enough energy. Some people that have tried that, they don't have enough energy. They have to add fruit. You have to test it out for yourself. Or maybe you don't have enough energy in the beginning, but you give it a week and then you're like, oh, my body's acclimated to it. I always say this, try it for a week, and if your body still doesn't feel right, you shouldn't be able to do it. When I first took the fruit out and I only did the oils, I felt like crap the first 2 workouts. But after a week, I felt great, and that's the way that I do my pre-workout. So I hope, I'm sorry that we can't get to all the questions right now. I really do need to jump on a plane to get out of here. But I am really have an intention to do more of these Facebook Live for you guys. I've been getting a lot of comments, and please, we need information. Let me know what you want, baby, and we will answer those questions and get to those topics. I'm going to just hold this last thing up. If you guys want more information about a lot of these HIIT workouts, 20minutebody.com. These are all the 20-minute workouts that I do. These are my social media at Brett Hobel on Instagram and Pinterest. And here's Joey's information right here, RestoraFit.com, and his social handle is RestoraFit.
So that's on all the media outlets, so Twitter, Instagram, you'll catch me on at RestoraFit. And that's where I post all my information. I have some articles on my website you guys can read. Actually, some of them answer some of the questions you guys have about food and fuel in your workouts and stuff like that. So there's a lot more information there, and there's a lot more to come. So yeah, so thank you everyone.
Joey, it's always a pleasure. And you guys, thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate you taking the time. Tell your friends to tune in to the replay. And I hope that everybody learned something. Thank you for the questions during, and I look forward to your questions after. All right, this is Brett and Joey signing out. Have a great Wednesday, Workout Wednesday.